All right, let's talk about Lords of the Fallen. Man, this preview went hard. It actually looks like a good game, man. And not only that, uh, there's actually really good co-op. So they introduced some form of co-op in the game that's very similar to the Seamless co-op mod. So you're going to be able to play with your buddy and like summon them once until both of you are bored of it, and you're always going to stay together. So first and foremost, I think like one of the biggest reason to get this game, in my opinion, is going to be to play with a friend, because the co-op seems to be done how we like it, and that's a very big positive. So that's probably like my biggest takeaway from this entire trailer is the co-op, which is one of the good things we saw. Looks to be done like the best it can be. So I'm really happy about the co-op. Now, when it comes to PvP, we don't really know much other than PvP is confirmed and invasions are confirmed, but that's really all I can say because that's all we heard. This showcase didn't show much of PvP, or actually didn't show anything PvP wise. Now, as far as the game is concerned, the whole game and whatever, I have actually a lot of positive to say about this. Number one, let's address the concerns that we had going into this trailer, which were the quality of the animations. And I'm going to be honest, it's decent. Like, it's not bad. And that's what we were expecting, because it looked from the other preview showcase or whatever, like the other gameplay bits that they showed prior to this, they pretty much showed like super cuts. And we could not really see the animations fully or properly, and now it's the first time where we can. So I was under the impression, because of the little we've seen look kind of janky, I was under the impression that they were trying to hide their animations, right? You know what I mean, right? Studios like try to hide their game has flaws or whatever. I think you guys know what I mean. So that's the impression I had going into this. But watching this here, you can tell that the animations are not from Software's level, which is fine, but they're decent. They're good enough to the point where they're not distracting, and I think some of them actually look good too. So I think the focus of the dialogue should not really be around animations, because I don't think that's going to be an issue, honestly. The animations are just fine, is basically the bottom line here. Now, aside from that, one of the things we take for granted in these types of games, you know, because we're used to From Software, is like enemy variety, enemy attacks, how the enemies feel, and how the enemies play, you know, the variety of attack, like how many different enemies are there in the first place. I don't know if you guys heard of Callisto Protocol. Let me tell you that Callisto Protocol had some really good trailers, and when it came to the actual game, there was like 2 or 3 enemies for the entire game. So, so yeah, you know, some games do that, but what's good here is that we're seeing so much enemy variety in this trailer that it gives me hope that the game is not going to be repetitive one way or another, because that's something we take for granted and that we don't necessarily think about. But I think there's some really good enemy variety there, and it actually looked really fun to play against all these various enemies and bosses. So bosses is what I want to go over next. I think the bosses look very From Software. That's a very good thing. Like, the bosses have their moveset, they have their own gimmicks, their own attack patterns, and all of that. They have window of opportunity. It's pretty much what we're used to, honestly. Like, I don't know what else to say about that, and that's very positive again. So as you're seeing, like, I'm gonna have a lot of positive things to say about this game overall. When it comes to the character itself, there's actually I should probably wait for the part where we see the character wearing that pyromancer type of undead armor, because that thing looked badass, man. There's some really sick armors in this game. I mean, of course, like, the visuals are never like the focus in games, right? Like, it's visuals never really make or break a game, but it's always very nice to play a character that you enjoy looking at. That's always been like a big deal for me personally, and I think it's also true for a lot of you out there. And so at the end of the day, the characters look extremely good in this game, like ridiculously good. The armors and the artistic work overall throughout the entire game looks top notch, like actual top tier artist work there. So big shout out to all the artists who work on this game. They're absolutely amazing. Big congratulations on all the work, like all the assets, all the armors, everything. And that's another thing, right? This game is always going to be compared to From Software games, and I think it kind of tries to do it anyway. Like, even though this game, I think, has its own identity, Just the fact that they're really going for the From Software style of games. I think it's always going to be compared to it, but I think visually wise, like this game definitely has its own identity, and it does a very good job at it too. Okay, so about the gimmick of the axial umbral, the two worlds. That's another thing that I was a bit like on the fence about going into this trailer, because it didn't look like it did much from the previous presentation we had. And again, I was pleasantly surprised here in this particular showcase. I think they do a much better job at showcasing what the two worlds actually do. So it's pretty much like you have two levels within one levels, or you have like hidden objects or hidden pathways within a level that are like hidden in the undead world kind of thing. So I think the gimmick actually works, and I'm not as worried as I was initially. I thought it would just be like a gimmick and you have to do both, or you constantly have to look at both. But I think it's more like, you know, you're gonna have a passageway that's blocked, or you're gonna have like a shortcut somewhere that's like in the underworld. And I think it could actually be interesting and even open up some replayability there. So I'm definitely going to wait and see for that one. And yeah, I think I'm much more positive about that particular gimmick going forward. Now, that's the armor I was talking about. I can't wait until we see that character's face. But notice he also has a tail. The character we had previously didn't have a tail, but this one has a tail. So that's another interesting one. Also, gameplay-wise, so we're going to see a lot of gameplay here. Notice that you get some really far roll there, which I was extremely worried about in my initial reaction, because we did a reaction with Steel on stream. I was extremely worried about that because I felt like that dodge, distance, the travel distance for the dodge was like too much, and I thought it would trivialize the game. But upon further inspection for the rest of the trailer, we noticed that the character playing, because they actually do show the menu screen, and I'm glad they did, because we would have had a negative outlook on this, you know, the dodge distance for pretty much going into the game. So what happened there is that all the sequence you're seeing, the character is actually max level, and it looks like the max level is level 300. And pretty much like max level 300, that's the guy that's playing right now. And so they have light load at max level, and so they travel so far like that because their character is pretty much maxed out. So that's not really representative of how you are going to play the game. And that's not even like probably the medium roll, which from the menu we saw, which we're going to see later on here. From the menu we saw that light roll, or that load that the character had, was split into three. So light, and I'm assuming there's going to be medium and full load or overload or whatever it's called. And so we're likely going to get some sort of medium and some sort of fat roll variation too. That's a bit on the speculative side, but I would say that's a very, very close and fair guess. Look at that kick. Beautiful. So yeah, all in all, don't get too distracted by how far the character travels, because you're pretty much looking at what light roll is in all other Souls games. So you're not looking at the base roll distance here. So that's something I was worried about watching this until I realized that, you know, this is a maxed out character, and that's not really going to be representative of how we play through the entire game. So that's that. Now, other than that, you know, there's actually a lot of good things to say about this whole game. I like the weapon variety. And again, another thing that we noticed regarding weapon variety and variety of attack and so forth, you see this particular character is using a lot of like fire magic or pyromancy. I don't know why I call this fire magic, but you see a lot of fire related attacks, like he buffs his weapon with fire, does a fireball there and whatever. We don't see the HUD, but at one point in this trailer, which is going to come soon, we see the character's menu, and in the menu, we clearly see that there are spells or abilities, doesn't matter how you want to call it, that are tied to various inputs. And so each and every input that was shown in the menu, triangle for instance, square, X, a right bumper and left bumper, were all tied to one specific ability each. So that means that the only button you have for sprinting, for dodging, is basically circle, and your two buttons for attacking your melee weapon are the two triggers. And so both bumpers and all the face buttons are all tied to a specific ability that you decided that you equipped in the menu. So I think that was something that was very interesting, and that is definitely a departure from what some From Software does. So I'm assuming that the rest of the inputs might be tied to, like, I don't know, something like the arrows or something. One thing that Steel also mentioned is that maybe those special abilities are like only activated if you mix one input with them. Like, for instance, you have to press L2, then press one of these ability buttons, and then if you press the normal buttons normally, maybe you get like something different, like two-handing your weapon would be triangle if you don't press L2 or something like that. So I think that was also worth mentioning, that it's not guaranteed that these inputs are just straight up tied to each and every attack that you assign to them. There could also be a possibility where you have to hold one button and then press the ability buttons. So yeah, that's that. Also, regarding these platforms that you're seeing, that was another gimmick that I thought was unnecessary, but I think I understand now the use case for them. Basically, when you travel between worlds, you can just either decide to have your character just just lose alive and then get into that Umbral world, or you can just die normally by playing through the game and you'll end up there. Either way, you know, you sacrifice something to get there. And so you can travel a little bit in that world by just using the lamp without losing a life. And I think that's the kind of the purpose of those portal there's, or sorry, not portals, but I think that's kind of the purpose of those bridges that you need to grab. It's like a way to block you from traversing through like certain level, like fully, by just holding the lamp, for instance. So you'd pretty much have to commit to a full switch of the world, whereas you probably can't use the lamp to walk around and then use the lamp to grab the platform. So it's kind of like their way of blocking your path from just using the lamp to walk around the Umbral world, as opposed to doing a full commitment of getting in there. So I think that's the purpose of these bridges that you grab. So I just wanted to mention that. That's a theory though, but I think it's actually pretty likely. But yeah, again, not guaranteed. We see a lot of weapons that the character is using here, like he's using daggers. Daggers look extremely strong. We also see a part in that trailer where the character actually blocks with both of the daggers, and he blocks a lot of attacks. And again, that might look silly, but if we go back to that little menu quick showcase that we saw earlier, like here you go though, by the way, this is when he holds the lamp. Like, you don't need to commit to the world to like just go through a platform like that. So I thought that was interesting. So going back to the dagger thing, you're going to see this character here block some attacks by holding both daggers. And it looks a bit silly because, you know, how are you able to block that many attacks by just holding daggers? Again, that's probably because the character is, again, max level. And so it's probably best to disregard that. But with that being said, there's probably going to be like some wonky stuff because even though like there was another game that was called Lords of the Fallen, it was not made by the same studio. So this is technically this studio's first shot at making a Souls-like game. Look at how badass the teammate character looks though. It's amazing. Really like how the teammate looks there. Sorry, I'm switching between subject, but I'm watching live as just like you guys. I'm watching this footage live and commenting on it as we're going over it. But I really think that this co-op gameplay is really interesting. Like, it looks a lot of fun. Like, imagine playing the entire game here and never being interrupted, just playing with your buddy here and just going through everything. That sounds like a blast, man. Like, just looking at this. Also, the teammate buffs can buff, like, you can buff your teammate, the teammate can buff you. You can really work hand in hand against various enemies. It's a lot of fun, man. I honestly think, like, if anything, the outlook going into this game, I believe, was a bit wrong until this point. Because even if it does not deliver to the level that From Software, you know, does its own games, even if it's not to the level of From Software, I think this game deserves its own shot for what it is. And if anything, it really looks like a good co-op experience. Here's the block, like, right there. Look at that. Look at how many blocks this guy blocks with his daggers. That's crazy. Anyway, there's a lot of little interesting bits like that, but I thought I would just go over the trailer, talking over it, to just tell you guys about my outlook on this, or like what are some of the important details I noticed, and why I think the the perception should really change toward this game. Because I felt like a lot of people on the channel here were very negative about Lords of the Fallen, where I think it looks like a really good game, actually, when you look at this full gameplay presentation here. So I think it's one that we're gonna have a lot of fun with. We've been blessed recently, man. You got that Armored Core gameplay preview that dropped, and right after you get the Elden Ring patch that drops, and then you get the Lords of the Fallen gameplay trailer that drops. It's crazy. We're gonna be so busy. There's like Armored Core that comes out, and like 2 weeks after there's Starfield that comes out, and then a few weeks after that Lords of the Fallen comes out. So yeah, there's not going to be that much downtime in that particular period. So we're going to be super busy with good games, and I'm really excited to play some good games. And Lords of the Fallen actually looks like it's going to be one of those really good games. Oh, also, watch this boss. I thought this one was pretty funny. Just look at him just playing with dead bodies. Like, what the hell? What is that, dude? Devs having a field day here. But yeah, that's pretty much my outlook on Lord of the Fallen. You guys can enjoy watching that particular boss fight. I thought that boss fight was really interesting. Reminded me a little bit of a lot of the From Software boss, obviously not just because of the visual, but it reminds me of that that tree boss in Dark Souls 3, like the big tree where you have to destroy the eggs to get it down. Like, it feels a bit similar to it here. Like, you can clearly see on the boss's body there's some weak points that are colored like yellow or orange, and you pretty much have to hit those to probably bring the boss down and maybe do some big damage or whatever. So I like that. I like these sort of things in boss fights. And so honestly, everything looking pretty good, man. I don't have too many negative things to say about this preview presentation. You guys know I'm always honest with these things. If I see something I don't like, I'll tell you. For now, as I said, the only thing that I do not like in what I'm seeing is probably that light load. I think it's still a bit much, but I'm happy to know that this is the light load and that character is actually over leveled, as opposed to it being like the baseline for the whole game. You know what I mean? So at least you're probably going to have to sacrifice some stat investment and to get that light load. So yeah, that's pretty much my outlook on Lords of the Fallen, at least the gameplay preview that we just got. I hope you guys enjoy this analysis of the trailer, and I'll catch you guys up next time. Take care, everyone.